Want to join in. More people will join in as we continue. Um, Good evening, everyone, again. Welcome. My name is Amaoji Chire. I am the NiMSA-SCORA Chief of Staff for this administration, and I will be your moderator for today. It is my absolute pleasure to have you all here. Please, if you can hear me, give me some reactions so I'm sure I'm being heard. All right. So today promises to be a very exciting conversation. And we will be going into things shortly. But just before our conversation begins, we have NiMSA-SCORA Director, Nwite Nancy, here with us, and she'll be saying some words to help us set the stage for our conversation. Nancy, please.
All right, good evening, everyone. You're welcome to our Consent Pod, a Twitter space, and it's a very important part of every form of advocacy against GBV, against sexual assault, against any form of advocacy that we understand what consent means, where it comes from, how it is given, or how you can receive consent. So many angles to this thing. It's a very, very diverse word. We just say consent, consent. We keep hearing the word consent. We don't know how diverse it actually is. So I'm glad to see that we are here today, and I know we are few, but I don't want any of us to be discouraged because I know that the important thing is impact. So even if we are just two on this space and two people can learn after this space, then that will be really amazing. I would just love all of us to pay very, very, very good attention. Have use it as an opportunity to discuss, ask questions. Our speakers are really wonderful people. They know a lot or enough because you can you can know a lot, although you can never know everything, but they're amazing. They've been so great as regards SRHR advocacy and the like. So I'm really glad to have you guys here today. Like I said, welcome to the space, and we'll be starting. And the person in charge of this space or moderating the space in total is the would like call it the person that this space is her best child. Yes, her brainchild. Sorry. So Chinyere, I think you can just carry on from here. Let's not bore the whole thing with long talk, and then we can start from here. Welcome, guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Nancy. Again, welcome to the Consent Pod. Um, so to help me move this conversation along, I have two amazing name sites with me today. First, we have Ogolua Olufemi Ajibosho, the immediate past technical officer on gender-based violence and an ardent SRHR advocate. Welcome, Ogolua. Please say hi to everyone and tell us what you're hoping to achieve with today's conversation. All right, Ogolua, you can go ahead now. You're a speaker.
Okay, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So thank you once again for having me here. I have to say that this is a very timely conversation. Conversation about consent is always timely. So I'm just looking forward to an enlightening time and a time where we can have, down to earth and very applicable discussions about content and everything that has to do with it. So I'm just looking forward to an enlightening time and a very interactive time as well. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Ogolua. And the second, we have yet another ardent SRHR advocate, Rekia Mohammed, the current NiMSA liaison officer to IFMSA and the immediate past NiMSA-SCORA National Programs Coordinator. Welcome, Rekia. Please say hi to everyone and tell us what you're hoping our listeners take away from today's conversation.
Okay, hi everyone. Good evening. My name is Rikia Mohammed, and like she said, I am the current NiMSA liaison officer at IFMSC. And this evening, we're going to be having a really exciting discussion on a very controversial topic, sexual consent. So I want you guys to, just open your ears and be open to this conversation. There are a lot of, gray areas and contradicting opinions when it comes to the discussion of consent. So we'll try as much as possible to lay down the facts, and I hope you guys learn one or two things, and of course unlearn some harmful facts that you may have learned before. So I look forward to discussing with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rekia. All right, without any more ado, we'll be going right into the meat of things. So sexual consent, as we know, it is a very important conversation because it forms like the foundation of healthy and safe sexual relationships as people get to feel respected and feel like their opinions are being heard when it comes to their body autonomy. And in the last couple of years, the concept of sexual consent has actually become more mainstream. But unfortunately, in recent times, when we still see some of the conversations that are happening on the internet, when maybe a story breaks and people have opinions on what should have happened or shouldn't have happened in line with sexual consent, and then with the rates of sexual assaults that we keep seeing, whether intentionally or unintentionally, it's clear that there is still an existing knowledge gap when it comes to in-depth understanding of sexual consent. So Ricky, I would ask, what would you say, in your opinion, is the reason why there is still an aversion to sexual consent, or why people are not able to understand it in the way that is necessary for them to have healthy sexual relationships?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Well, first of all, I think consent is something that, like I said, is very controversial, and a lot of people have varying opinions on the meaning of consent because the definition is sort of subjective depending on the situation and depending on the way the person understands it. So sexual consent is ideally an agreement to participate in sexual activity. I know it sounds very simple, but there is a whole lot to it, and there's a whole lot of dynamics attached to this definition than just a mere agreement to participate in sexual activity. So I think the understanding of consent will come from a lot of research and reading, and of course having discussions like this to be able to understand those gray areas and be able to navigate the different technicalities within the definition of consent.
All
I
right.
don't know
So
if
for the avoidance of doubt, what is sexual consent then?
Okay, for the avoidance of doubt, like I said, sexual consent is basically an agreement to participate in a sexual activity. Consenting and asking for consent, they are all about setting your personal boundaries and also respecting those of whoever you're with. That's your sexual partner. And of course, if things are not clear, you have to check in with the person and see if things are clear for the both of you. So you are explicitly agreeing to engage in a sexual relation with somebody. So that's the plain definition of consent.
Thank you very much. And this is what I love about the definition of sexual consent, because it is elaborate in that when you think about sexual relationships between humans, there's so many scenarios that can come up because we are so many people and we are unique in our sexuality and the interactions that we have with other unique individuals. And so sexual consent, as much as it can, tries to cover its bases. Obviously, you can't cover all the scenarios that exist in the world, but as much as it can to try and cover, okay, when it comes to seeking consent, when it comes to giving consent, when it comes to the consent being informed and enthusiastic and all of that. All right, so to now dive into it proper, the question is now, how do we go about seeking consent? What are the ways in which we can understand when you are in a sexual setting, before the sexual setting, during the sexual setting, and after the sexual setting? Ogoluwa, could you help us with this?
All right, thank you very much. I think you even started with explaining that there is a different dynamic with consent when you are already in a sexual relationship and when you are not. So if you are having like your first sexual relations with someone, there is a different dynamic with consent than with someone that you have an established sexual relationship with. But regardless, the concept of consent, the core still remains the same. In the sense that so we have like there's this approach that is used to explain concepts, just consent really clearly. It's called FRIES, FRIES. So these things are things that make consent, and if they are not present, it is not consent. So first is freely given, just like Rakia said. Consent is when you agree to engage in any sexual activity, any kind, any form, penetrative, non-penetrative. It has to be given freely. It must not be under any kind of duress. You cannot, in terms of receiving consent, giving consent, seeking consent, if you are the receiver, if you are the giver, whatever position that you are feeling in this equation, it has to be freely given. You have to be sure. And one thing that we have to get out of the way in consent, that it has to also be reversible, in the sense that if consent that is freely given at a certain time, if you are certain, right, that okay, I have received consent from this person, and you are certain that yes, I want to give consent to this person, it is clear, right? It can't be reversed. In the sense that if you are having if you are engaging in a series of sexual activity, maybe you are going from kissing to caressing, when you are going from step to step, and this applies mostly for if you are having sexual relations with someone for the first time, you have to ensure that you remember, as a giver and a receiver of consent, that you can reverse, you can take it back, it is very possible to get uncomfortable. So it is necessary that whoever is the receiver of the consent, or both parties in this sexual activity, check in with comfortability. Is this comfortable for you? Especially when they are having their sexual relations for the first time. So you must be able to check in, okay, is this comfortable? Can I continue? Can I go ahead? Do you want me to stop? If you notice any form of discomfort, because you cannot miss someone saying yes to you at a particular time does not mean the person is agreeing to furthermore sexual activity, or someone saying yes to you before doesn't mean that they will say yes the next time. So you have to know that consent you cannot say, the person already, he or she already agreed to it before, why are they taking it back? Consent can be reversed. Then FRI, then I is that it is informed. I think Rakia is going to do justice to that. Consent has to be informed. Most of us here, I believe, are medical students, so we know what it means to receive or give informed consent. That is, they must have knowledge of what is being done. But like I said, Rakia will do justice to that. And then we have, it must be enthusiastic. Now, this is very important because the concept of coercion, which we'll talk about later, is the absence of this. When someone is giving consent and the person is not, there's no form of enthusiasm at all. Consent has enthusiasm in it. There is no consent without enthusiasm. And then lastly, consent has to be specific and clear. Just like I said, FRIES. It has to be specific and clear. There's no cutting corners. Yes is yes, no is no. There's nothing like, oh, I read the person's body language. I be speaking. There's no sign language. I said the person actually speaks in sign language, but like, you need to listen and hear actual clear consent. There is no two ways to it. You have to be sure. Okay, do you want to do this? No. Do you not want to do this? Yes. However way, it has to be very, very specific. So to wrap it up, consent has to be freely given. It is reversible. It is informed. It is enthusiastic, and it is specific. So I think that those are the things that make up the core of consent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So because all of this is geared towards the idea of sexual assault, consent or the lack thereof of consent causing sexual assault, how would you explain or depict the lack of consent when it comes to seeking consent or giving consent or being enthusiastic to sexual assault? Ogolwa.
Okay, I think, okay, if you say that someone is, let's be practical now. Let's assume that you and your sexual partner here, you are about to engage in a sexual activity. Let me put it in those words. And you are not, you are said, okay, can we do something? Or you start doing something and then you can feel a form of discomfort. You see that they are not comfortable with what's going on. There's a strain, there's no clear, you are not sure. Immediately you start to doubt if the person is comfortable with what's going on. You need to ask. If there is any form of doubt, if you are not sure, that's when you need to ask. You need to be sure, because I don't think anybody here is a mind reader. You're not a mind reader. You can't read the mind of the person. So you need to, any form of discomfort that is seen at all, I feel like you need to check in as the receiver, however way it is, because it goes both ways. So if there's any discomfort between the two people that are engaged, you need to check in. It is necessary to do check-ins. Are you comfortable with this? Should I continue? And then, even as the giver of consent, as the person who is uncomfortable, you need to know that you need to be clear in communication as well. You need to also know that you are not communicating through the mind. There is no telepathy here. You have to be, you should know that you actually have the right to state out your discomfort and say that you are not interested in something. You don't owe it to anybody. So I think with that, there has to be a clear-cut communication. When there is if you are doubting, immediately there is a doubt, a form of that doubt, please, it's necessary to clarify if there is any form of discomfort between any of the members of this activity. I don't know if
Thank
I
you
was
very
able to
yeah,
answer the
yes.
question.
Yes. So essentially, what she's saying is that when it comes to consent and sexual assault, the chances are that if you are doing something that is not comfortable for a person, when a person if you've not asked for consent or if you are seeking consent, chances are you are sexually assaulting the person, because the whole idea do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do that? Should I not do this? Hence, if you do something that the person does not want, you could be sexually assaulting the person. If the person has said if a person says do something else or flip it another way, as long as you are not working within the confines of the consent that has been given to you, because the idea again is that the consent is confined. So as long as you're not working within the confines of that, the possibility is that you are sexually assaulting the person. All right. So to continue on how to go about consent, Rekia, could you tell us more about what informed consent is and how withdrawing consent can look like in a typical sexual scenario? Rekia.
Yeah, hi. Okay. So I'm going to be speaking a bit about informed consent and withdrawing consent. The literal meaning of withdrawing consent, and then how it can look like during a life scenario. So informed consent, like we've already established, normal consent, just consent, sexual consent, is basically you agreeing to enter a sexual relation with someone. But informed consent is a permission granted in full knowledge of the possible consequences of a particular relation you're about to enter with a person. So you giving an informed consent means that you understand what is about to happen and you are agreeing to that. You're basically saying yes to it. That is informed consent. The informed there means that you have knowledge of what is about to happen. You are fully aware of how it's going to go down and whatever consequences that are attached. Okay? It's just like you giving informed consent to unprotected sex. You understand that the person is not going to be using a condom and you are at risk of sexually transmitted diseases. It's likely that you can get pregnant. So you knowing all these and still agreeing to it is informed consent. You are giving an informed consent. But withdrawal of consent effectively nullifies any earlier consent, and it basically, at any point you withdraw your consent, it means that whatever consent you've given prior to that has been nullified. whatever, no matter the way your consent was enthusiastic and whatever, my co-facilitator earlier explained all the properties of consent, even if it checks all the boxes, the point at which you withdraw your consent nullifies the earlier consent you gave. So there's a term known as post-penetration withdrawal. So post-penetration withdrawal of consent is when the person initially consents for an intercourse, but subsequently or during the intercourse, the person takes back their consent and thus wishes to, terminate sexual intercourse. So there is a long ongoing debate about the issue that's like what is the period under which consensual intercourse could become non-consensual. That at what point would you give a post-penetration withdrawal of consent that it should be overlooked? The truth is there is no point, there is no issue, that this is not even up for debate. As long as a person says no to an earlier yes, that entire act of sexual intercourse should be terminated immediately, because at that point you're saying no, it has become non-consensual. Anything after that is considered non-consensual. So when we're talking about informed consent and also withdrawal of consent, we have to understand that it has to do with your answer explicitly given, either a yes or no. And if you're giving an informed consent, it means that first of all, your consent checks out all the boxes already explained. It's enthusiastic, it's freely given and whatnot. And then you have prior knowledge of what is about to happen and every other consequence attached to it. That's for informed consent. Then withdrawal of consent is you basically nullifying any earlier sexual consent that was given by saying no or by withdrawing. Like the moment you say, no, I don't want to go on again, that has nullified any earlier consent you've given, even if it's mid-intercourse. So a post-penetration withdrawal of consent should always be respected, because at that point you're nullifying your earlier consent, and anything that happens after that point is going to be considered non-consensual. So I hope with this brief explanation would be able to properly distinguish between consent and informed consent, and also understand that post-penetration withdrawal or withdrawal of consent nullifies any earlier consent given, and then anything after this period is considered non-consensual. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rikia. This is the aspect of consent that a lot of people would term in quote controversial, because it makes them uncomfortable. The idea that the consent that you have been given can be taken away simply because the person isn't interested makes a lot of people wonder, oh, what have I done wrong? Is she no longer interested? Is he no longer interested? And then it puts them, and people do not know how to sit with their discomfort, which is a fact. But it's very important that if we are striving to have healthy sexual relationships, that we are very conscious that these things happen. It's not an indictment on your person. It could be, if I'm being honest, it could be that they are simply not enjoying it, and that is very valid. So it could be an indictment on your person and your sexual prowess. But again, people have body autonomy, and you are not entitled to having sex with a person, even if the person is your husband or wife. We will go into that later on during this session. But to also elaborate on what they've all said, the point is that sexual consent is an ongoing process. So someone has given you consent to do something. They've given you consent to touch their head. It does not mean they've given you consent to touch their hand. This again is the aspect of consent that a lot of people are often confused about. But like Ugolua said, if it's a first-time partner, it is super, super important that for every step of the sexual activity, as you are increasing the sexual activity, as you are just going higher and higher, it's important that you take note that certain things may not be permissible for the person. And so you should not assume. And that is where ongoing consent comes in. So if you want to kiss a person, in fact, people that just think that kissing a person simply because you think that there's sexual energy between you, I would like to announce to you that that can be sexual assault, because you can make a freaking mistake one day and land yourself in trouble. But that is aside. The fact is, in general, if you want to kiss a person, just ask. That is the simple thing, especially if it's someone that you have never had sexual contact with before. If it's a first time sexual partner, I want to emphasize again, as simple as kissing the person, no matter how much of sexual tension you can feel in the room, it's important you ask. Not because some people think it's sexy or anything like that. You know, you hear some people say things like, oh, consent is sexy. It can be for you, but the idea of consent isn't that it should be sexually stimulating to you. If that is where you are coming at it from, then that's a very wrong premise. What is important is that you view consent as something that is necessary for a healthy sexual relationship. If it happens to be sexually arousing for you, good and fine. But it's important that we have our premise correct. So when you've asked to kiss the person, if you want to take off something on their body, it's important that you ask again. Now, this is for first-time sexual partners. And then people now ask, so does this mean that every time I am having sexual relations, I have to do this? Of course not, which is where the concept of blanket consent comes in. And the idea of blanket consent is that if you have like an established sexual relationship with someone, it doesn't mean that every single time you want to take off your bra, take off your shirt, do this, do that, you have to keep asking. So you can say things like, is it okay if we do this? Or let me know if there's anything I'm doing that you're uncomfortable with. Or as the person who is giving consent, you can say, you do not need to ask me, again, both ways, because it's male and female, and the two or more sexual partners that are involved. So it's important that you can say, you can do whatever you want. I will let you know when it's uncomfortable. Or as the other person, you can say, let me know if there is something that I am doing that is uncomfortable. That way you save yourself the trouble of having to say, oh, can I kiss you? Can I touch your hand? Can I touch your leg? And all of that. If you are with me this far, please give me some hearts. Let me know that we are following each other. All right. So when it comes to consent, there are some aspects that are trickier and a bit more complicated, and it has people confused on whether this is consent or not, because we've talked about informed consent and enthusiastic consent, and enthusiastic consent says, I am happy to do this. I want to do this. I am excited to do this with you. Now, does this mean that when you ask someone to have sex with you for the first time and the person says no, that you cannot convince them? For example, if a person says, oh, I cannot have sex with you because I cannot have sex without a condom. And then you bring out a condom and say, okay, I have a condom here. Are you open to having sex now? Does that mean you are persuading the person? Or if a person says, I feel shy or something, and you say, I can make you feel, I promise to take it slow or make you feel as comfortable as possible. When you say things like that, does it mean that you are crossing a line? Does it mean that the sexual consent is no longer enthusiastic? So to talk a bit about that, about coercion and grooming and power dynamics that can kind of affect sexual consent as well. That's an aside from coercion. Ogoloa, please give us some context.
All right, thank you very much. I think one of the things that we said earlier when we were talking about the general concept of consent is enthusiasm. Now, if any part, and the man, the woman, whoever is involved in this sexual activity, if there's any absence of enthusiasm in the supposed consent, right, it is not consent. It is not consent in any way. That's where the concept of coercion comes in. And basically, coercion means agreeing to engage in a sexual activity under duress, or when it feels like you have no choice. So when someone agrees, I'm using the word agrees because that's what follows the hierarchy of choice. When you agree to go ahead with this sexual activity because it feels like, oh, I have no choice. I just have to do this. There's no enthusiasm. Anything that you do without any form of enthusiasm, without any form of, you're not voluntarily doing it. If you had other choices, you will not doing it, that is coercion. And coercion can manifest itself in so many ways. Like if you feel, like I said, if the person feels pressured, if there is an influence, let's assume now someone is in a higher position, right? And you feel like if you do not consent to this sexual activity, if you do not agree, it's not consent. It's coercion. If you do not agree to this sexual activity, the person can use he or she's influence to maybe deter a path that you are on, or you will not be able to receive favor from that person. It is not consent, it is coercion. And this can manifest in even the simplest and even the like I say the most complex situations. Like I said, now if someone is trying to convince you, when there needs to be a convincing, there will be no form of enthusiasm. Okay, don't worry. I want us to have sex today, but I don't feel like having sex today. And you're there like, don't worry, it's going to be great. Oh, I'm tired. No. Wait, I just you don't need. I don't need you to do much. All of that, you try to convince the person. It is not consent, it's coercion, because at that point the person is feeling pressured. When someone is like asking, someone repeatedly keeps asking for sex, repeatedly, like it becomes very frustrating. And the person, okay, let's just get on with this. That is not consent, that is coercion. Or when someone feels like, okay, if they don't consent or they don't agree to this sexual activity, that would maybe end the relationship. There is when once someone begins to put a landmark or put a condition that, see, if we do not do this night, that's the end of our relationship. You never see me again. It is not consent, it is coercion. Or if someone feels like, okay, there will be consequences for their refusal to agree to engage in this sexual activity with you, it is not consent, it is coercion.